Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Bernotas, and I'm the Director of Instrumental School Methods and Repertoire for Alfred Music. I'm incredibly excited to join you today, or having joined me today, one of our best-selling authors, composers, friends, mentor, person I still call when I have questions, Mr. Robert Sheldon.
Good to
Bob
be here.
Sheldon is one of the most performed composers of wind band music today, and of course, is the lead author for Sound Innovations for Concert Band. His compositions embody a level of expression that resonates with ensembles and audience alike all over the world, and I could not be more happy than to be hosting Robert Sheldon today on 5 Questions with Robert Sheldon.
It's good to see you.
Good to
Happy to be
see you.
here.
Thank you for being with us. And I'm going to get right into it with our first question, which is, who was your most influential music teacher and why?
Boy, that is really tough because there have been many. And in looking at that, I mean, it kind of depends on what you're doing. I mean, Frederick Fennell was an extremely influential person in my life, as was Alfred Reed, Clifton Williams, Frank Wicks in conducting. But I have to say, overall, the person that has probably been the most influential was Richard Bowles. Dick Bowles was the band director emeritus from the University of Florida. And when I got my master's there, he was still teaching on staff, and he was the person who agreed to take me on as a composition student when I was getting my master's degree in conducting. And his practicality, his common sense approach, his knowledge, incredible knowledge of everything, just it made such an impression that to this day he sits on my shoulder when I write, and I still hear his voice saying, "Are you sure you want to do?" He just was brilliant, and he is the person responsible for me being here today as somebody who's had a bunch of pieces published, because although it wasn't my first publication, the piece that I wrote under his guidance, Fall River Overture, was the piece that launched my career as a composer. So I am forever grateful to him, miss him terribly. And he was an amazing teacher, and I've tried to remember as much as I can about what he taught so that I could share those things as an editor for the 17 years at Alfred, to be able to let people know the things that he taught me because they were so helpful.
Well, and it's funny, you talk about practicality and understanding that balance between artistry, practicality, and you've done that for me, of course, as an editor and friend too.
Well, that makes you a grandchild of Richard Bowles because it all comes right from him.
That's great. And I love that. And someday maybe we'll do your whole story because you have like the most fascinating story of all the instruments you played. And you read a list of influencers that have influenced all of us in some way through recordings, video, books, historical things. And it's just such a great.
Yeah, I was kind of lucky to be kind of the Forrest Gump of the band world. I just happened to be in the right place where these incredible situations were there. And I think most of it's just luck, but part of it also is, if you see an opportunity, I've learned you really need to seek it out. And so I've been very fortunate that I was annoying enough that all those people finally said yes.
That's right. Luck and persistence, I think, probably help. So, as we also know, you've been a teacher, right? Is one of the many facets of who you are. And as teachers, we face many obstacles. So, how about reflecting on your teaching career and thinking about one of those many obstacles that you encountered, and maybe how did you overcome it?
I would say that probably the most difficult obstacle I faced was an unreasonable principle. And by unreasonable, I mean the things that she did were so, there are no words to describe the things that she would do, that when there would be a district band directors meeting, as soon as I showed up, everyone came over. What'd she do now? What'd she do now? Because they were so bizarre. an example, just to give, just so you can see what I'm talking about. Um, I was reorganizing the band library, so every day I would take out a piece and we would sight read it. Sometimes it was way too easy for the group, sometimes it was way too difficult, but we would just read it and then I would put it all in score order and I would recatalog it and it went into the library. We were doing one of those days, happened to be a very difficult piece that was beyond them, but we were reading it, doing the best we could. And when we finished, the intercom came on and she scolded the band for sounding so bad.
Wow. Unbelievable.
And that's just what came to mind now. There are many things. And so I thought, how am I going? And I wasn't the only one. I mean, the entire faculty became kind of, it was like an insurgency going on. But for me, I was a very young teacher. I took it all very personally. And after going through this she was not the principal that hired me. My principal retired. So it was my second year of teaching when this happened. And by the end of my second year, I thought I have to do something because there are not enough medications in the world to get me through another year of this. I mean, I was serious. I was having serious depression and anxiety problems, and just walking into the school, what was going to happen next. And even the students in the school just, it was terrible. I remember the student council had a little fundraiser. They sold um, fuzzies and pricklies. They were these little fuzzy little balls with a happy face on them, and they were called warm and fuzzies. And you could buy one to give and send to someone anonymously to tell them that you thought they were a nice person. And then they had cold and pricklies, which were these little slimy little rubber. Her office was filled to the ceiling with cold and pricklies. Probably cost me $5,000. But anyway, I was not the only one that had that problem with her. And so the way I fixed it, I faced it down and I set an appointment with her to go see her in her office. And I told her how I felt and that I realized that in her eyes, I must be incompetent and stupid and foolish and the worst teacher in the world. And I don't know if there's anything that I could do to change her mind on that. But what I asked her to please do is to understand that my intentions were good. I said, if you can just let me know that you at least know that about me, I can survive this. And she said, well, of course I know your intentions are good. The next year, I was like, no problem from her.
Wow.
And so I learned at a very early age, you can't run away from adversity, from problems like that. You have to face them down. And you may not like the answer you get, but at least, if you're trying to do the right thing, you at least have to find a way to communicate with everyone. And so that was a very powerful message for me.
Yeah, and I can imagine how terrifying that feeling is. Like, even just building up to it. It's probably a full year of building up to, like, I got to do something and standing. I could imagine I have a similar experience in some way, but I remember standing outside the door and, like, giving it myself a pep talk, you got to do it. And that's a great lesson. Wow, that's quite an obstacle, and I think it's something that everybody can kind of connect with in their own personal way. Thanks for
this was a pretty severe case of horribleness coming from her. I mean, I had a 45-minute commute to work, and they were working on the interstate at the time, and it was difficult sometimes to know whether you'd make it there early enough. She would stand by the sign-in chart, and if you happened to be 5 seconds late, she had a clipboard. This is going in your personal record. You're late to work. I mean, it was that kind of thing. I mean, it was a very difficult thing. But after that, it got a lot better. And so it's a good lesson to learn.
It's a great lesson. All right, how about on to number 3? A little bit of a different turn here to one of your other facets, which you've been a guest conductor all over the world, which is incredible. Is there a particular experience or festival that stands out as having been particularly inspirational or special for you?
Well, that's really hard but I can there's again, different types of reasons why different things are special. Um, I've loved for the last several years conducting the uh, the band festival in the Black Forest region of Germany, because the kids there are so energetic and so incredibly talented. So it's such a joyful week spent with them. But I probably, when I wrote With Every Sunrise in honor of my late partner, um, that premiere in the Sydney Opera House was extremely emotional for me.
Yeah.
And I still, that to me is something that's very important. But then it doesn't have to be those kinds of performance experiences that may. I did a clinic with an elementary band in Tokyo for Yamaha, and the kids played very well for fifth graders. I mean, they were really quite astounding. But everything you did to help them, they just soaked it up like a sponge, and their eyes lit up like, this is magic. And it was so, and their parents felt the same way, and their teachers felt the same way. And to come out of an experience like that where everyone is just like, this was just, that's a very special thing. But honestly, I think looking back over a number of these things, probably the one that stands out to me because it's more recent is working with the 22nd Regiment Military Band in Montreal. And they're a wonderful group. It's like a United States service band, it's a Canadian service band. Phenomenal musicians. They're wonderful. They're great people. Um, and it's Quebec, but most of them do speak English, fortunately. And I was doing a conducting clinic, and one of the conductors was there was a series of them, maybe 12 conductors, and they were each playing one of my pieces, a different one. And the conductor that got up to do, I believe it was choreography, was he, and I'm thinking, yeah, you're missing this. So I let him go, and I said, let me just give you some suggestions. And I didn't really know how the band was going to respond. I'd conducted them on a concert the night before, but I didn't know how they respond to this. Sure. And so I was on the podium conducting the things that I thought would help him, and talking to him the whole time. And this ensemble was just doing everything that I wanted them to do. It was one of the most astounding experiences. And I look back on that thinking, how lucky to be able to do something like that. I mean, that was just, they played so well. They were such lovely people. And to be able to get the response immediately without having to explain anything, just through the gestures and talking to this guy saying, now watch what I do here. Yeah. And it was great fun. And again, I think to me, music is a very joyful experience if it's done right. And so I've been lucky to have a lot of those. That just happens to be one of the more recent ones that really sticks with me. So that, I would say that's a memorable one.
But there's also a connection between all the stories that you just told about those ones. The smiles of those kids as the light bulbs went on, the response of the ensemble that was in front of you. It's that connection, and the light bulbs, literally the light bulbs going on, and the smiles, and that connection that's happening in the same place, creating that moment, I think is what makes it special.
That's why live music and music education and working with energetic, passionate people, be they kids or adults or little kids or teenagers or whatever it may be, that's why I just think I have lived such an amazing life, because I've had a chance to do that. I mean, I think anybody that teaches gets to do that in their own teaching environment every day, but it's hard when it's every day, because it's not it's not like you come in for a weekend and work your magic act and you're gone.
Right.
There's an authenticity involved, but if you can do it where you teach, then you've led a joyful life. And that's to me why I've loved teaching all these years.
That's fantastic. And it's very magical, which is going to bring me my next question as a follow-up. Magic and fun and experience of these conducting engagements and guest appearances and band room visits and orchestra room visits. Has there been a performance situation that's gone left or right or funny or dropped mute, they got lost in the score, the wind blew everything away? Do you have a memorable performance where something went goofy, and how did you react?
All of those things have happened, but the one that comes to me, and it's still hard to discuss it without cracking up. I'm sure you remember a piece by Leroy Anderson called "The Typewriter."
Sure.
And I was when I all of my teaching jobs, I taught band and orchestra everywhere that I taught in the high school situation. And so our orchestra was going to be doing the typewriter. And I asked if any of the string players, I said, would any of you like to be the soloist? And this one girl said, oh, I'd like to do that. I know the piece. I'd like to do that. And I said, good. And I said, do they even have typewriters anymore? I'm wondering if we'll be able to find one. She says, I have one at home. We can do it. And so we really played it up. I mean, I had her, hit the A key on the typewriter, and we tuned it. And I said it's a little flat. She came out like a soloist. We had her set up like the concerto.
Yeah.
So we really, we did the whole thing. And so we start the piece, and she's doing her thing, and I kind of stopped paying attention to her after all because she was wonderful. And then I look over, and the thing I forgot to mention is the only typewriter that she had at home was an electric typewriter, which was fine until it caught on fire on stage.
Oh, no.
And it was getting hot while she was playing it. And she was having problems touching the keys because they were hot. And the reason I looked over at her is because something smelled like it was burning. And I look over, and there's like black smoke coming out. What are you going to do? We finished the piece, and it practically exploded by the last. I mean, standing ovation. I know the audience thought we did that on purpose.
You planned it, sure.
But Melanie was doing typewriter, and we're like, I was mortified, but it was probably the funniest thing I have ever seen happen by accident on stage. I mean, I've heard all the things about 1812 overture, and somebody put flour and water inside the bass drum and they hit it, and or conductors where they dropped their baton, hit the ceiling, and didn't come down until much later, and all this kind of stuff. Yes, all of that's happened, of course, but this typewriter catching on fire, all I could think of is Leroy Anderson would never have imagined that. That's what I remember.
That is a great story. The fact that you even found a typewriter is pretty amazing too.
Well, and that's been several years ago, but yeah, it was probably an IBM Selectrix, an old one, but she hadn't used it in years, and the cord had gotten a little frayed, and it just, yeah.
That's a great story.
Music can be dangerous.
It can be. It must have been a fast tempo to catch it on fire.
I went as fast as I could.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, to our fifth and final question for the day. You love to travel. I know how much you love to travel, and your most recent endeavors have been on cruises all over the place to some exotic locations. Can you share with us one of your most interesting or favorite places that you visited?
Well, here again, interesting for different reasons. This most recent visit was Antarctica, which was beyond anything I could have imagined. But Chengdu, China, is such an amazing place to be. Iceland is fascinating. I'm glad I got to travel to St. Petersburg and Moscow. When I did, I wouldn't go now, but I got to, those were fascinating. Israel, seeing Petra in Jordan. I mean, fascinating. But I think that if I was to pick a favorite place, and that's hard because I love Sydney, Australia, but I think my go-to place, whenever I'm in the neighborhood I go, is Lake Garda in Italy. And since you are Italian by family heritage, I'm not saying it just for that reason, but it is absolutely, it's a place when I visit there, the beauty is so, it's incredible, but it's also very relaxing, and of course the food is great. But it's beautiful, and it's relax. I just feel when I get there, it's a total decompression, and it's a very hard place to leave. because it is so beautiful, and it is so people are so lovely, and it's a small village and surrounded by mountains and this gorgeous lake, and it's not really as much of a tourist area as some areas on Lake Garda might be. So it's a little off the beaten path, but yeah, Garda, Italy, that probably is my place.
I like that because knowing all that you've done and all that you continue to do, it's nice to know that there's some place in the world that you can go and relax.
And that is it. I don't. I mean, I've when I've been conducting in Italy or in Germany or somewhere nearby there, I try to take a couple extra days before I fly out and just take the train up to Desenzano and take the ferry up to Garda and say I'm just hanging out here 2, 3, 4 days, whatever I can, allow time wise. And it is always just the best thing to do. But don't tell anybody. I don't want anybody to know about it. It has to be our little secret.
All right, I won't say a word. All right, Bob, thank you so much for joining me today. I think that was a really nice conversation for our viewers to get a little bit of behind the scenes information about one of our most favorite people, you. So thanks for joining me.
You are very kind, and thanks so much. I'm glad we could do this.
You got it. Thank you, everybody. Until next time, we'll see you soon.